So it is such a pleasure to have our Sisterhood Shabbat, and I just love that we have celebrated the Sisterhood Shabbat not only by so many of the members of our Sisterhood, thank you, participating in the leadership of the service and in the reading of Torah, but also that we have brought a wonderful scholar in residence from the Jewish Theological Seminary to teach us this weekend. For those of you who were not here yesterday evening, for the teaching after dessert or during dessert about tefillin, I will read Professor Sarah Wolf's biography. She is the Assistant Professor of Talmud and Rabbinics at JTS. She is a faculty member at the Shalom Hartman Institute of North America, where she sits on the Theology and Created Equal research teams. She received her PhD from Northwestern University, go Cats, and her BA in Literature from Yale University. Her current research explores the uses of emotions as legal categories in rabbinic literature. We should have asked you about thou shalt not covet, right? That could have been a good one. She has taught rabbinics in a variety of settings, including the Dr. Beth Samuels Drisha High School program, including Nishma, a summer of Torah study at JTS, Beit Midrash, the Savara, a traditional radical yeshiva, and the first ever Talmud MOOC on Coursera. And she currently helps run Kihilat Hadar, a traditional egalitarian minyan in Manhattan. Professor Sarah Wolf.
So when I had my aliyah, I said a blessing that thanked God, Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Hamim, who chose us from all the nations, V'natan Lanu et Torato, and gave us God's Torah. Possibly a reference to what we read about in the Torah portion this morning, God giving us the commandments and the Torah on Mount Sinai. Now, this idea that God Bachar Banu, that God chose us, comes up in other liturgy as well. It comes up, for example, in a Friday night Kiddush. We thank God for choosing us. And this is a notion that I imagine some of us may find problematic. Right? The idea that God chose us maybe implies some kind of cultural chauvinism, right? The idea that God chose us and not other nations, and therefore we are better than those nations, and we hold some kind of truth as Jews that other people do not, right? And this is something that many of us, I think, may struggle with, right? This is something that we Jews have been told in reverse by other religious groups, right? No, you don't have the truth, only we have the truth. You Jews don't know what you're talking about, right? So why would we want to say that to other people? And in fact, there are some Jewish traditions that change that piece of the liturgy and say, no, we're not even going to say Asher Bachar Banu, right? We're gonna change that. We're going to talk about being drawn near to God, right? But not talk about chosenness. So this may seem like a recent, sort of more modern response to discomfort with the idea of chosenness. But I also want to talk about how the rabbis of the Talmud bring out some of this discomfort with chosenness. And I think what the Talmud does with this material and a lot of other material that's so amazing is it's able to actually call out tensions, bring them forth, and explore them using some creative literary retellings. So I'll share a bit about that with you today. So first of all, there is a midrash in Tractate Avodah Zarah that gives a different read on what it means that we Jews got the Torah and other nations did not. So according to this midrash, God actually first went around to all the other nations and offered them the Torah first. And those nations actually didn't want it. So we Jews may have been the ones who wound up with the Torah, but we were God's last choice. Okay, so this maybe helps us a little bit with the cultural chauvinism piece, but still, right, it makes it seem like, okay, fine, but we're the ones who wound up, we're the ones who realized how great the Torah was when no one else did, right? You might think that that's the conclusion of this midrash, but that's actually not what the Talmud tells us. So the Talmud takes a verse from today's Torah portion that tells us that Moses led the people out of the camp towards God, Vayityatzvu betachtit pahar, and the people stood beneath the mountain. And the Talmud says, what does that mean, they stood beneath the mountain? Rabbi Avdini Bar Chama Bar Chasa said, this teaches that the Holy One, blessed be He, overturned the mountain over them like a tub. Shekafa HaKadosh Baruch Hu aleihem et hahar kegigit. Right, so instead of being underneath the mountain, as you might have thought at the foot of the mountain, no, they're literally under the mountain because the mountain is overturned on top of their heads. And God said to them, if you accept the Torah, great, and if not, I'm dropping the mountain. So now, right, the Talmud is drawing forth another problem with this idea of chosenness. Not only is it potentially culturally chauvinistic, but it's also coercive, right? If you're chosen by God, what are you going to say, right? We talk about the idea that we have a covenant with God, but a contract needs mutuality. It needs two parties that have some kind of equal standing. You can't have a contract that says, according to this contract, you will give me this money and I will not kill you, right? That would not be a legally binding contract. So the rabbis are saying, wait a second, how can we talk about really having this covenantal relationship with God if God tells you, here's the Torah, you better take it. And so the Talmud says, Amar Rav Acha Bar Yaakov, Rav Acha Bar Yaakov said, Mikan moda'a rabba le'oraita. From here, you could really make a powerful legal protest to the binding nature of the Torah. And Rashi explains, if you were called to trial, let's say, in the world to come or something, and they ask you at this trial, well, why didn't you observe all the laws in the Torah? You could say, I was coerced. It wasn't really a binding contract. So, the fact that I didn't observe all of these commandments, you can't really hold me accountable for that. So what do we do with this, right? How do we reconcile this sense of the problematics of chosenness, the fact that maybe we're being forced into some agreement to take the Torah that we actually didn't really want? So Rava says, well, this may be true, but even so, the Jews accepted the Torah in the days of Achashverosh, in the time of Queen Esther, because it says in the book of Esther, Kimu v'kiblu haYehudim, that the Jews upheld it and took it upon themselves. And Rava says that means that they took upon themselves what they had already accepted coercively at the time of Sinai. Okay, so because it says these words, Kimu v'kiblu, in the book of Esther, that means that hundreds of years after the giving of the Torah at Sinai, the Jews decided, okay, yes, we know we had to accept it then, but we're really taking it on ourselves now. But interestingly, if you look at that verse in its context in the book of Esther, it tells us Kimu v'kiblu, the Jews upheld and took upon themselves and their descendants and all who might join them to observe Purim. So, first of all, the verse is not talking directly about the Torah, but not only that, right? The book of Esther is actually famous for not including God at all. The Jews took upon themselves something that was a decree invented by people that they decided was going to be an important part of Jewish tradition forever. That's what the Talmudic proof text is for the idea that Jews wound up accepting the Torah upon themselves, that they accepted something that is really very clearly a human later invention. So what does this tell us? So I think the rabbis are teaching us that there's two modes of thinking about what it means to accept the Torah, right? And one way is to think about acceptance, meaning just sort of complete deference. I'm doing this because I'm told to do it. I have to blindly follow, and that's just it. God said some stuff, and all I am is sort of this passive recipient. And the rabbis are saying, yeah, maybe, but that's not our version of what accepting the Torah means. They're saying there's another mode of acceptance, which is to say, yeah, this is now my textual inheritance. And that actually gives me the license to be a little creative and to come up with new ideas, like Purim, for example, and say those ideas are important. And this is Torah too, to create midrash, creative retellings of biblical narratives, right? To say, actually, let me tell you what happened at Mount Sinai, right? God turns the Torah above the people's heads. They're saying that too is a form of accepting the Torah. And maybe what they're also saying is that we can understand chosenness in a different way, right? That can help us understand that there's not one monopoly on the truth, because it's all up to us as individual interpreters. So when we think about chosenness, I hope that we can hold these creative rabbinic notions of textual creativity and the importance of human innovation in mind. Thank you. Shabbat Shalom.
Okay.